I was asked recently how to sum values until the fourth occurrence of a specific value. So in this video, let's answer that question and see how to look up the nth occurrence of a value. So our task in this first example is we have 25 questions and then a score. And the score is simply 1 or 0 for this example. What we want to know is we want to return the question that corresponds to the third occurrence of a 0. So I want to work on the idea of this 3 strikes rule. And yes, we still ask 25 questions, but we're interested in knowing at what question did this participant get to where they had their third wrong answer. Now in cell D2, we're going to start with an if function. So we want to perform a logical test for that 0. So I'm going to select all of the values in this range. So yes, we are going to have an array here. You normally provide the if function in its classical sense with a scalar value, a single value. We are going to select multiple values so it will return an array. Now I'm using Excel 365, that's no problem. And indeed it's no problem in older versions, although you will have to use Control-Shift-Enter when we finish this formula. For now, I'm going to put equals to 0. So I want to perform that logical test on all values in that range against a value of 0. Comma, what do I want to do if that's true? Well, I want to return the row number of that question. So I'm going to use the row function and I'm going to select that range of cells. Here we go. Close the bracket on that. And let's close the bracket on that if function. Now, what do we have so far? If I select the logical test values, it shows the trues and falses, the result of that logical expression. And you can see the true in the third instance there, which is the first occurrence of that 0. And then you've got the second occurrence and finally the third occurrence for our needs. Now the row function is simply going to generate an array with all the row numbers, but together, when we select the if function, this will return either false if it's not a 0, or the row number that 0 appears in if it is a 0. Now with this information in hand, we can add the small function to this. The small function returns the smallest nth value. So it asks us for the array, which is the result of the if function, and on the end a comma, and then you put the instance that you're interested in. So for me, it's 3, the third smallest value, therefore the third instance of a 0. So the question I was asked was asking for the fourth occurrence. I've changed this to 3. You would enter any value that you're interested in. If I close off the bracket, let's actually look at this running at the moment. If I press enter, it says 11. Now that at the moment is talking about row 11. Yeah, I want the answer is question 10. That is the third occurrence. To get the correct value from the question column, we will simply go back there and add one of everybody's favourite functions, I hope, which is index. And I'm going to ask index to fetch the values from range B2 to B26. Sorry, not B2 to B26, A2 to A26, because I want to return the question, but you would reference whatever range or table column you want. And then for the row number question, that's what small is returning. We saw that, it was returning row 11. Now I've made things a little bit awkward for myself here because I've started these ranges from row 2. So small is returning the row number of the sheet, but what index is interested in is the row number from within its range, which I've started from row 2. So you see they're slightly out of sync. I could just subtract 1 from the result of small, but what I may do is just adjust each of these to start from the first row. Here we go. And I'll close bracket for this index function and run this, and it tells us that the result is question 10, which we can see is correct. So that is how you can look up and return a value for the nth occurrence of another value. So we're returning for the nth occurrence of a 0. Pretty awesome. Now I'm just going to go back and take a copy of that entire formula, because what I was actually asked is to sum the values until that nth occurrence. So we'll take a copy of that and escape. And I'm going to come into this cell D5 and paste that formula in there, because to convert this into a sum to that position, I can simply start my sum function at the beginning of this formula. Sum, I'll tell it to begin from cell B2, then I'll put in my colon, the range operator. So that will convert what index is returning into a reference. A close bracket on the end, and running that tells us the value of 7. Up until that third occurrence of a 0, the sum is 7. How awesome is that? Now please bear in mind that here I'm dealing with 1s and 0s, which came from the question I was asked, but these values could be anything. For example, maybe it's a 3-point scoring system and you can score 1, 2 or 3 for that given question. And here it's returning the answer of 11 for that same formula. So this is great. Lookup functions, such as XLOOKUP or VLOOKUP, but they typically will match the first occurrence, or if you're searching in a reverse order, the last occurrence of a given value. There isn't one to find that second occurrence or that fifth occurrence. So this is the formula you want for that requirement. Now, what if the values were text values and we wanted to count the occurrences into a specific text value? So in this example, I'm using an idea such as when I play basketball with my kids in the garden and we play like first to 5. Obviously, I always win. I'm taking the logic of something like that, and we have these scores, Y and N for yes or no. I want to know until the third no, the third miss. So I've already got the basic elements of my function here from before. The only difference to earlier is that the conditional test is looking for the value of the text value n. And I'm still looking for that third occurrence, but remember, just change that 3 to any number you want. Now to do the count, a method for doing that is I'd start by putting that index function in like before. So I'll do this index function for B1 to B26. And put my close bracket the other side. Don't forget my range operator. And then instead of using the sum function from before, I'm actually going to use a function called rows, which just tells you how many rows are in that returned array. Yes, we could do something like count A as well. But in rows, I could say B2. Now, very important, I start this one from the 2 because I want to avoid row 1. That first occurrence with the text value scores is not one I want to count. So B2 colon and then 2, the value returned from index. And running this tells us that the answer is 12, which is the correct answer. It was on the 12th attempt where that third miss, that third N occurred. Well, I hope you found this video useful. It covers quite a niche topic, but it combined some of our favourite functions, especially if and index, two powerhouses from Excel. Thank you for watching. If you did like this video, please give it a like. It helps the algorithm. And if you enjoy videos such as this, then subscribe so that you are notified of the latest videos at this channel.